Hello and welcome to my channel. This is Jennifer Vanderbeek from scrapsoflife.com, and in today's video I have a major card project to show you. So I bought these two kits from Simon Says Stamp last year, and they're both Christmas kits. One was the regular monthly kit and the other was like the deluxe additional kit. Either way, I got both of them. I didn't use them. Since I've been trying to use up all these old kits and it was July, I thought, okay, Christmas in July, that makes sense. So I decided to get those kits out and see how many cards I could make from these two kits. I started by cutting down all of the pattern paper and cardstock in both kits to 4¼ by 5½, so your standard quarter sheet cards. So I was able to just kind of stack it up, see what I had. I kept the offcuts from that because they can be used as well. And any of the pattern paper that had predetermined designs like, squares or the strips of greetings, anything like that, I decided to go ahead and trim those out too. And I started with those for the first set of cards that I'm going to make. So the deluxe kit came with some envelopes, some white and some vellum. And so I decided to use those with some of the pattern paper segments that, they might have been intended for pocket scrapbooking, anything like that. I just decided to go ahead and use the ones that seemed appropriate. There were some that would have been good for like a countdown on a calendar, 1 through 25. I decided to use those in a couple of different ways, as you're seeing here as I go. One of them, I kind of had an idea to do like 12 days of Christmas. And so I trimmed the little squares out and arranged them to however it seemed like a good idea, paired them with some patterned paper, and then used some pop dots or zap dots, in fact, to add a little bit of dimension. And then for the one piece of card, the pattern paper that had an all over design that was kind of a card in and of itself, I decided to use some of the texture paste and some of the iridescent glitter included to kind of spruce that up and just have it as a card on its own. For the next batch of cards, I decided to use the Tim Holtz grit paste and the texture paste together on some of the shimmery like champagne paper, the tags, and even some of the black paper to kind of see how it reacted. The stencil that was included was really kind of cool. It's pine trees, two different sizes, and they have a background and a foreground, so you can use it for shading or you can use it to, get different trees out. You kind of use it however you want. I was really happy with how quickly the grit paste and the texture paste both dried. So that meant I didn't have to set them aside for too long before I could go ahead and finish my cards. And I have added some of the glitter that was in the kit as well, just to kind of add some sparkle. I really wasn't sure how some of the cards were kind of turning out. Some of my application of the paste was a little rough, but once everything was on the card and it was trimmed down a little bit, I was actually really happy with how these started to turn out. The main thing that I added to these kits were some pre-made card bases. I had bought a couple of packs at, I think it was Tuesday Morning. They were like 100 card bases for, I don't know what, $3, something like that. And they're lightweight for the most part, but since I'm almost always going to be stacking stuff on top of them, the fact that the card base is a little light isn't really a problem. I had 3 colors, a white, a burgundy, and a craft, and those are the bases that I'm using for the cards. Now I'm finally getting to use the stamps that came in both the kits. There's this very cute one with the Christmas tree and the reindeer, and then there's another one with Santa and bells. So I am using the distress inks that came in the kits to go ahead and stamp those out on some of the white cardstock panels that I'd cut. And then I am going to spend some time with Prismacolor pencils coloring in my figures. Now, the reason why I went with Prismacolor over anything else is because in one of the kits, I believe it was the deluxe kit, was a white Prismacolor pencil. So I was like, okay, well, we'll continue on with this theme. And I'm just doing some very simple or 3-tone shading on each. And then I'm going to use the stickles that came in the kit to dress them up a little bit. I believe the green blend and the red blend came in the kits. I had the gold blend from the November kit just before these. So I pulled that too. I'm really not adding a lot to these kits. I'm trying to do as much with what was actually in the boxes. Part of the challenge with these is to use the kits as fully as possible and show you, what's possible within just the one kit. Now, I also did the same with the Santa and Bells images. I used the ivory cardstock instead this time, just because the pattern papers that came with the deluxe kit were more of like a vintage or antique vibe. So I thought I could differentiate them that way. And again, I'm going to use my Prismacolor pencils to just quickly color in each of the figures. Now I say quickly. For the video you're seeing, I'm only coloring in one of each image, and then I turn the camera off, and over the course of a week, just picking it up when I had a moment, I would color a few more, and I would do them very much in an assembly line style. That's really the only way to make it through a project like this. Is you can't do, well, I mean, you could, but it's a lot to ask of yourself to try and do absolutely individualistic cards and have so many done at once. So you want to kind of gang up some of your processes as best you can and treat it a little bit like an assembly line, but that doesn't mean that they're all going to be the same. As you'll see, once I have finished coloring and fussy cut all of the images that I've stamped, you'll see that while some of them I do use in the same ways, I'm not always going to make the same identical cards. Now, I also used the deer silhouette die cut to cut some out of the ivory panels that I'm going to pair up with some pattern paper or card bases, and then decorate those for very simple, straightforward cards, which I have to say I really love quite a lot. The embroidery floss that I'm using in several of these cards, that also came in the kit. So again, very useful, and I'm using that stencil again with the two colors of green, the stress ink that came in the kit. Now, when I first put down the green grass layer there, I was like, oh, that doesn't work. But then I came back over with I believe that was the grit paste, and by the time it was done, it kind of looked like a field of snow over grass. So, and that was really what I was going for. With this one, I am going it kind of reminded me of a night scene or, a Patronus, like from Pottermore. I don't know if you're a Harry Potter fan, then you might be familiar with that. Vellum also came in the kit, and so I'm using some torn strips of it here. I've used it in some of the other cards already too. It's a nice thing. Now, what I've decided to do with a lot of these cards where I'm using a stamped image or a die cut image and a pattern paper as the background, sometimes I think that the pattern papers can be a little bit overwhelming. So instead, the best way to kind of bring those down a notch is to cover them up. So I took a spare sheet that I had of off-white cardstock, and I cut some large ovals, and then I was able to stamp the sentiment and add the colored stamped images with a little bit of foam adhesive, and then, that made for some very quick cards. And those cards are very similar, and, sometimes you just have to take advantage of that. There's no shame in that. You're not going to be sending the same people the same cards, so nobody's going to know, well, unless they watch my video, that I made several of the same cards. Now I'm going to move on to the very cute reindeer, and I decided to kind of make a scene for these guys, but there's so much ground to cover on that card. So I ended up adding a window die cut that I had, I believe it's Dynamics, and I cut through it, and then I'm going to use some of the snowflakes in both kits to stamp on some vellum to kind of make a little snowy scene outside the window, use the message banner as bunting over the window, and then arrange the rest of the elements on top of one of those ovals that I had left over that I cut in half to make a rug. And I'm going to do the same thing with some horizontal cards instead of the vertical, because I don't have as much landscape to fill. I don't have to do the window. They just kind of worked with the card the way it was, but I added those lines to kind of make it look like paneling or wallpaper behind them, just to kind of make it a little interesting. So now I'm going to combine the trees and reindeer from one set with the bells from another. And I'm getting a little creative with some placement and suggest some movement with the bells by tethering them to the banner. And then I can place a pair of reindeer, one on either side of the tree. Now I'm using a yellow ink. This did not come in the kit. This is VersaFine, I believe, and I'm using it to kind of create the effect that the light is glowing. It wasn't as readily apparent on the first version of the card, but on the black it really stood out a little bit more. Now, for this next card, I had a bunch of the bells and packages and everything are left over, and I thought, okay, well, what about a great big tree? So I just kind of used my sponge dauber and created a rough tree outline. And now I use that same idea of stamping or sponging in a bit of yellow to make it kind of look like glowing from the lights reflecting from the ornaments. Now I'm working with some scraps. These are being treated kind of like presents, and I've got a pair of gift tags behind. And so the idea that I'm drawing in with the stickles, ribbon, and bows on the packages behind them is just again to make it look like presents. And then, okay, we had these 2 sheets of glitter sticker paper, and I cut a very free-formed tree shape and put the presents underneath it, and I think I think I might have been running out of steam with some of the images that I'd cut and colored and cut out. So I also had these 2 blue panels. I love blue and silver and even blue and gold for Christmas cards and Christmas decorations over the red and green. That tends to be what we use at home. And so I decided to make a couple of blue and gold embossed cards. Just they're identical, but I'm using the green ink and for the trees and a little bit of the grit paste for snow. And I really like the way those turned out. So, all in all, I created a total of 33 cards. And I think I'm a little carded out by now. But that's 33 cards that I have ready to go for this upcoming Christmas season. And I think that's fabulous. I hope you do too. I wish you happy crafting, whether you're creating Christmas cards or something else. All right. See you next time. Bye bye.